All right, everybody, let's cover a very popular carry gun at the moment, and that one is probably, this one is probably one of the most popular carry guns, is the Sig P365, but this is the XL version in the nice coyote tan slash brown here, which kind of matches my shirt. So I wanted to cover this because it literally is one of the most popular carry guns right now, 365 series, and for a lot of good reasons, I think. Now, even with my misgivings towards SigUSA on how I think they operate as a business and some of the practices they've done, this is actually a what I would call a good pistol. I'm not going to say it's great, but I would say it's pretty good. And honestly, in its class, these micro compacts here, that like to call them, basically the ultra super duper thin, itty bitty teeny tiny 9mm pistols that hold like 10+1 as a baseline. I still think the 365 is probably the best in its category at the moment. I just don't see anything that really does what this does better in any significant way. So we'll get into just a quick review of this. This is not my personal firearm, but a generous friend of mine has allowed me to shoot it a bit and do some review work. So we'll start off right off with what makes the XL, right? So our standard 365 has a much shorter frame and a shorter slide and barrel. So this one is slightly bigger as far as slide length, barrel length, and grip length, which I think is a welcome addition myself, because I always felt the original 365 was just a little bit too small for me. As you can see, my hand completely covers this and fits perfectly right there. On the other 365, this my pinky would just be kind of floating in space, and I kind of don't like that. So I would be running the 12-round magazines, which this gun comes with 2 of the 12-round magazines and 1 of the extended 15-rounder, which you can see looks like that. Not too bad, actually. It's a little blocky, but you don't notice it when you're shooting. So I think that's a pretty good value there, considering the price of magazines for these pistols is a little ridiculous, but you know, that's how they make their money, I guess. But yeah, I much prefer the larger size of the XL, because it's really not that much larger. And when you compare it to something like a Glock 43, for instance, like this, you can see from the top anyways, it's really not that different as far as size goes. Length, of course, you know, the barrels are going to be a little different, but also, if you can see the kind of thickness of it, see, that's good. There. They're very similar in terms of size, but of course the Glock 43 only holds 6+1 and it's a flush fit magazine, versus this and its flush fit magazine literally holds twice as much, which I think is pretty incredible, to be honest. That's awesome. So Glock 43 is kind of a little bit outdated as far as things go, but this one is a lot of firepower in a small package, and it's not so small that it's extremely unpleasant to shoot. But this is also not a gun I would want to shoot all day either, and I'll get a little bit into that. But first, the positives. So I think these are actually selling for a pretty good value right now. The standard baseline model is right around the 500 range, but the XLs tend to be in the 600 to 650, 680 even. I believe this one is around 680 as well, just because it's the tan version and it comes with the extra magazines. So there's a little bit of the cost that's put into there. As far as features go, of course, it has the optics ready plate here in the back, but also, again, in Sig's infinite wisdom, they decided that in order to put a red dot on here, you have to lose your rear sight, which I think is terrible. I don't think they should do that. And if you look at some of the newer designs of 365, they've actually changed that, at least the 380 versions, where you can keep your rear sight and also have an optic mount, which I think should have been the way to go from the get-go, but they did not do that, of course. So what else? Yeah, also it's got the flat face trigger here, which I honestly think is more of a marketing gimmick than anything else. I do not like these flat face triggers. I did not like them in the 320 series. I don't like them in the 365 series. I don't like how they feel. I don't like how my trigger finger rides against it. It just doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't make anything better. And it certainly feels a little bit worse than the standard curved trigger would to me. So how did it shoot I would say pretty darn well, actually. I got a bunch of targets here I want to show and showcase. So all of these shots were going to be at 25 yards, which some people say it might be a little excessive for a pocket gun, but I think if you can shoot at 25 yards, you can definitely shoot anything under. So this is 30 shots at 25 yards. Took 10 shots per magazine and just basically fired about around a second, you know, a nice even cadence to make sure I wasn't taking my sweet time. And as you can see right here, you know, this was a B23 target. You can see 30 shots. I mean, it's tearing out the freaking center there. If you do your part, the gun will certainly do its part. So, pretty impressed with that. As far as grouping goes, this one was probably one of the better ones of the day. You can see right here, this was right around a 2-inch group at 25, so that's pretty cool. And here's a bigger spread target I have here. 5 shots on each target, and you can see 2 groups there in the center, kind of all over the place, but this one kind of more focused here is definitely pretty good. And then this one right here. So if you take away the flyer down here, this group is actually 1.5 inches, you know, at 25 yards, which is pretty freaking impressive for, you know, a gun this small. So that's pretty awesome. Quite happy with the accuracy potential of the gun. So it can definitely shoot, it can do the job, especially out of a small package like this and a very limited sight radius. That is what I would consider especially impressive. So kudos to Sig for making a accurate pistol. Reliability was 100%, never had any issues. All full magazines +1, no issues at all. It's fed hollow points, it's fed aluminum, steel case, all that stuff, no problem at all whatsoever. The recoil is snappy. It's not uncontrollable, but it is snappy. I'd say a little bit less snappy than the regular 365, but still snappy. I mean, it's just physics, right? So all that 9mm energy has to go somewhere, and you are going to feel it in your hand because the polymer on this gun is excessively thin. It is, I mean, there's a reason why this gun is able to hold so much ammunition and do what it does in its category so well is because the polymer here in the frame is like paper thin. I mean, you can just see how utterly thin that is, you know. So yeah, not much for recoil absorption there. You're going to feel it. That is to say, you know, 9mm doesn't have that much recoil anyways, but something to consider. And it's one of the 9mm carry guns that doesn't necessarily like hurt your hand too much like the smaller ones. Like this Glock 43 is going to hurt my hand a lot more than this 365 XL will. So still not a gun I would want to shoot all day. As far as the trigger goes, I think I already mentioned I do not like shooting flat face triggers. Whenever I'm shooting these things, it feels like my finger is just slipping on this as I'm pulling, and I just, you know, the whole spiel about like, oh, it breaks at 90 degrees no matter how you're pulling it or whatever, right? And so I'm like, okay, so what does it matter that it breaks at 90 degrees? It's still a trigger that breaks, right? So to me, I don't buy into the flat face trigger. Now, how the actual trigger pull itself feel? Not great, to be honest. That's one of my big downsides about 365s is the trigger pull. Now, some people say they're great, some people say they're serviceable. I'm more leaning towards serviceable, not great. So the reason why I say that is because there is not a very defined wall on this gun. And I like crisp, clear, defined walls. Like a Glock 43 is very noticeable to me about, I know when this is going to break, boom, just like that. And the reset, of course, is very positive for people who care about that, but I can get that right back on the wall and it feels like I'm pressing it right now and I'm like, okay, there's the wall, boom, breaks, cool. This one, however, just doesn't really do it for me because I get the take up and then you pull, but then it stacks a little, and then it stacks a little more, and then it stacks a little more, and then finally it breaks. Cool. I don't like that kind of stack. I want it to get the take up, hit the wall immediately, and then break cleanly. which is what the Glock does. This does not. And some people are saying, I've heard, you know, oh, it's going to break in over time. It's going to break in with more rounds that you shoot, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. Why can't it just be good from the box? You know, I never have accepted that rationale when it comes to breaking in your striker fire triggers. I don't believe in it. If it's not good from the box, why can't it be? So, do not like the trigger on these. Now, that's not to say I wasn't able to shoot it well. I mean, obviously you saw the groups there on the paper. I can shoot it well, yes, but it's not my most favorite thing in the world, to be honest. And especially when this gun was dry, when we first got it, we're, you know, dry firing and testing the trigger pull and everything. When this thing is bone dry, it's gross. You can feel the grittiness in it. It's just like grit. Ugh, gross. And the reset too. I mean, for, like I said, for people who care about that kind of thing, it's okay. At least there is an audible snap to it, but I don't really care too much about reset myself. Yeah, so trigger is not great. It also has the characteristic kind of dead thud that like the modern P320s have when you pull the trigger. So it doesn't sound like a crisp snap like the Glocks do or other striker fire triggers, right? You can hear the snap. With the 365s and the 320s, you just get a dud, right? So, does that really matter so much? No, because this has gone bang for me every single time. It's not a reliability issue, so it's worked just fine for me, but just an unusual kind of aspect, I guess, of these guns. What else to say? So I would also say too that the modern Sig finishes, right? So on their modern 320s, their 226s, they're basically their whole pistol line where they have this kind of, I forget what they call it, NDLC coating, I believe. It's crap. Their finish on this gun is honestly garbage. So if you look here at the controls here, the slide lock release lever and takedown lever, right? These look incredibly worn already. I don't know if it'll focus, but even when we got this out of the box at the gun shop, those surfaces looked super worn, as if someone was putting this in and out of a holster repeatedly, right? Which doesn't make any sense. I don't know why they do that. Rear sights also look a little worn, as well as the front sight. And then my buddy, when he was just carrying it for one day, the finish, especially up here on these bevels here in the front of the slide, were immediately wearing away. And it's a little bit better now that it's been cleaned up, but you can already see, you know, if it'll focus a little bit. There's just a little bit of holster wear already forming. And then also as well, on the I guess underside of the slide here, where the polymer frame is actually rubbing up against these portions of the slide here. So right there where I'm pointing. These portions here on both sides are rubbing against the actual dust cover of the polymer frame, and it's rubbing the finish off. So you can already see bare metal underneath there. And we've put less than 500 rounds through this pistol, so you know, if someone's going for like a well-worn, like weathered kind of battlefield look, I mean, sure, cool. But for basically a brand new gun to be wearing this quickly is personally, I think, a little unacceptable. I know Sig is going to say, oh, well, it's stainless steel and the treatment goes into the metal, so it's corrosion resistant, all that. Sure. Not sure if I really believe that, because even stainless steel can rust, of course. But yeah, the finish on like the modern 320s and 365s are paper thin. They do not last well at all. They don't survive abrasion, reholstering very well. I'm not really thrilled with their finishes. It's even worse on the inside of the gun. So just from the limited rounds that we've put through it, there is incredible amount of wear. At least it shows that way on the inside of the slide here. Let's see if I can show you. So right where the barrel hood kind of locks up right here, where you see all that wear pattern right there, where the barrel slides in and out, that is showing a ton of wear, honestly, for less than 500 rounds. It's pretty crazy. So when you really start to look closer in detail about how they really milled and machined all these parts for these guns, it really does feel more like they had a good idea to start with, but then the engineers are kind of like, oh, we have this problem, we have that problem. Let's just take a shortcut and cut this thing out, or cut that thing out, or bevel this a certain way, and bevel that a certain way, rather than going back and trying to redesign more hopefully, I guess. It just looking at the internal construction of this, it makes you feel like they cut a lot of corners and we're just trying to rush this out as soon as possible. At least that's the vibe I get. And knowing SigUSA, I would not be surprised if that was their strategy, because that's just something that I think they would do. So I'm not thrilled about those particular things. I think they could improve on that and maybe take their time a little bit when they're making these things, or improve the finishes and make it more wear resistant, things like that. So, I mean, they are cosmetic, and some people will argue, of course, well, if this is a carry gun, it's a tool, and I don't really care if it gets scratched up. Yeah, okay, I can see that argument, but at the same time, if I can get a gun that doesn't wear that much and it still looks great despite me carrying it all the time, why would you not have both? So, especially for the money that you're paying and you're relying on these things, it should be all of those things for you as much as it can be, right? I would agree that function comes over form in pretty much every case when it comes to a defensive weapon, but if you can have function and form, why not? And that's the ideal goal that basically these gun companies and anyone should be shooting for. Why not have it all? So, all that being said, I am actually pretty impressed with how these things shoot, how accurate they are. I still think these are best in class right now for what they offer, how they shoot, reliability, all that stuff, aesthetics. I think these things look pretty cool, honestly. They fit my hand very well. I definitely prefer this over the Springfield Hellcat. I can definitely tell you that. It's got a better trigger than that thing does. Optics ready for people who want that kind of thing. And it has its own little rail, all that stuff. So I've been impressed, frankly, by how this has turned out. It's just, if it were up to me, I'd replace this flat trigger immediately with a standard curved trigger. I would also put a manual safety on it, or just get one that had a manual safety, because that's how I like to shoot, because there is no trigger dingus on 365s. And I would probably, if I really wanted to go all the way out, I would probably go and get my personal gun Cerakoted or somehow refinished in a better factory finish than what comes from Sig, because I can already tell, like, if I was carrying one every single day in Arizona heat and weather and all that stuff, this finish is going to not survive that at all. So, but yeah, I do like that it comes with two 12-round magazines and one 15-round magazine, because like I said, those magazines are very expensive, and I think that's the majority of the cost for some of these pistols is the magazines. So you should always have enough magazines to practice and also carry with. So the more magazines you get from the factory, the better, I think. So overall, it's good. I think 365 as a platform and the XL are good. Could they improve on them? Yes, absolutely they could. Will Sig do that? Probably not. Probably not. Or if they do, they'll probably introduce a Gen 3 and not call it a Gen 3, and then they'll make it utterly incompatible with the legacy generations of 365, and introduce a whole new SKU and everything else and blah, 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 because that's what Sig does. And then, of course, they will introduce a limited edition model that's only going to be produced for a month or two or something, and then they'll discontinue it, and then, yeah. But anyway, so this is a recommended piece for sure. When people ask me, like, what's the latest and greatest best carry gun, it's probably going to be a 365 XL. It is still best in class for what it is, and despite its flaws and misgivings that I think people can honestly live with. I could live with it. It's not ideal, but I could live with it. So I am hoping, of course, someday HK comes out with their own 365 like this, micro compact, and totally blow Sig out of the water. That would be fantastic. Or even Walther, if they did something like that, that would also be fantastic. Because I much prefer those companies over Sig. But in the meantime, we've got these. They do work. They're quite accurate. These are a recommend from me, and that's all I got to say about that. And yeah, we'll see you next time.